has written to a friend has leaked into the newspapers with comments that everyone takes as a direct attack on George Washington's character. And then there are multiple other incidents that bring George Washington and Thomas Jefferson into direct conflict. And by the time George Washington dies, Thomas Jefferson really avoids making a public statement after George Washington dies, and he eventually will go to Mount Vernon and pay his respects to Martha Washington. And Martha Washington will call that moment one of the worst moments of her life, having to receive Thomas Jefferson at Mount Vernon.
This is a page-turner, and I must say that to quote former CBS correspondent Bob Schieffer, I can't remember the last time I read a book and so many times said to myself, well, I didn't know that, than in the book Washington's End, which is from Scribner Publishing and written by our guest Jonathan Horn. Let's talk to David in San Francisco now as we look back on the State of the Union and ahead to the impeachment vote. Good evening, David.
Well, thanks, Jim, and your guest. You know, it's funny. At the end of the speech tonight, I made a point to do a bunch of freeze framing of Trump making his way through the crowd. And he first goes up to the Supreme Court justices and shakes their hands. Take a freeze-frame moment look at his interaction with Justice Kavanaugh. It's scary. I mean, to see Kavanaugh's face, something is unsaid there. Then he steps forward a little bit. He shakes hands with Gorsuch. It's pretty clear. He then starts moving toward Roberts, who is handling the impeachment trial, and the Secret Service guy does a block, just like a football player, cuts right in between so they can't shake hands. Then Trump moves forward, shakes a couple of senators' hands, and then moves in on Mitch McConnell, leans in on him. He's whispering something to him, and McConnell slaps him on the back. You know, so the guy that's supposed to be the unbiased juror, the president of the Senate, is all of a sudden slapping the back of
I mean, let's face it, as a famous senator once said regarding the impeachment of Bill Clinton, he has pre-opinions, and that, of course, would be Chuck Schumer. So no one is suggesting that anybody does not have some opinions there. And as for the Secret Service blocking the president from interacting with John Roberts, baloney. That's just a complete crock. I don't know what was going on there, but more than likely you had people being jostled. Your take in summation on the president's interaction with people before and after his speech tonight, Jonathan Horn.
Well, this is one of the more, again, choreographed moments in Washington. You used to have people camping out to try to get seats right while the president is going to walk down that aisle so they could be closest to him. And now, of course, there are people who don't want to shake the president's hand because that is the state of our country at the moment. So these interactions are always sort of forced and a little bit awkward. And I think everyone is trying to find their way and figure out how to act. So it's difficult to read too much into any interaction that takes place during that moment.
Quick thought as we have on someone who's written a book, who writes books. By the time we talk about one, usually they're writing on the next one. So very briefly, what's planned next from Jonathan Horn?
Well, another book about American history, because we just have so many rich stories to tell about our great country, and whenever you look back, you find new ones.
Fair enough. We'll wrap on that note. Stay on the line. We'll speak off air. Jonathan Horn, the author of Washington's End, published by Scribner, with some of his thoughts about the State of the Union address. This is Westwood One. Hi there. Good evening. Welcome to the Jim Bohannon Show from Westwood One Radio. We're at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. Online, find us at JimBohannonShow.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimbo Talks. As the president spoke this evening and gave his thoughts on the State of the Union, a constitutional mandate, by the way. Presidents are required from time to time to inform Congress as to the State of the Union. The first two presidents did so orally, then with Tom Jefferson. For over a century, it was a written report because Jefferson didn't like to speak. And then about the time that microphones and cameras came along, coincidentally, presidents discovered the joys of doing the speech as a speech and not just as a written report. Anyway, later today, of course, comes another item in this week of heady events. The Senate delivers its verdict in the president's impeachment trial. And here's correspondent Linda Kenyon.
It will take 67 votes to convict President Trump, making it all but certain he will be acquitted on 2 articles of impeachment, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The outcome has become more clear over the past few days, with senators taking to the floor to speak on the impeachment for the first time since they served as the jury in the president's trial. Senator Lisa Murkowski, for example, made her views clear.
I cannot vote to convict.
The Republican, who had been viewed as a potential swing vote on whether to allow additional witness testimony and documents during the trial, said it is the voters who should decide if President Trump stays in office.
The voters will pronounce a verdict in 9 months, and we must trust their judgment.
But Murkowski also used her time to announce some decisions of her own, decisions about the entire impeachment process.
The House failed in its responsibilities.
And the Senate, she said, has nothing to be proud of either.
The Senate should be ashamed by the rank partisanship that has been on display here.
Fellow Republican Ted Cruz also took aim at the process.
It is up to the voters to decide which policies they want to continue. The House managers have abused the constitutional process by trying to use impeachment to settle a partisan score.
Majority Leader Mitch McConnell turned up the criticism of the Democrats.
Washington Democrats think President Donald Trump committed a high crime or misdemeanor the moment he defeated Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election.
Republican Susan Collins, who voted for witness testimony and documents, nevertheless says she will vote to acquit the president.
I do not believe that the House has met its burden of showing that the president's conduct, however flawed, warrants the extreme step of immediate removal from office.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer applauded Collins' decision to allow witnesses and documents, and he criticized those who did not.
The American people are just amazed that our Republican friends would not even ask for witnesses and documents.
And fellow Democrat Chris Van Hollen reiterated what Democrats have been saying all along, that an acquittal of the president offers no real vindication.
There is no exoneration, no vindication, no real acquittal from a fake trial.
The Senate will cast its votes on the articles of impeachment at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
And in terms of the notion that I'm sure will be peddled hard now by the Democrats, namely that the president will not be exonerated but merely technically acquitted of this impeachment, I would wear this impeachment, this partisan hack job of an impeachment, like a badge of honor, quite frankly. He could campaign on this impeachment. Here's Steve in Angier, North Carolina. Good evening, Steve.
Hey, Mr. Jimbo. I couldn't get in the last hour. That was very good entertainment.
Well, thank you.
In fact, President Trump stuck the impeachment in their eyes tonight, so in my opinion. But, you know, that aisle that comes right down the middle between the left and right side, symbolically, that could as well be the Red Sea, because that is the most divided place that I've ever seen in my life. When one side can't even get up and applaud for totally nonpartisan things. I mean, Black American unemployment is as low as it is. They sit there. Now, why wouldn't that be a good thing for everybody?
Well, because obviously they see it as a partisan thing that although if you held them down and injected them with truth serum, they'd be forced to admit that, but it's just not something that they feel they can admit. It's a thorn in their side because, let's face it, if you're the party out of power, there's nothing better for you than for your fellow Americans to be hurting. I mean, that's harsh, but that's true.
Tuskegee Airmen, 100 or more years old.
Yeah.
Trump promoted to a brigadier general.
Yeah.
Now, nothing partisan about that whatsoever.
Well, no, I mean, and that got some applause. I mean, let's face it, even Pelosi, I think, stood on that one. So,
Pelosi was having a bad night.
It was a very bad night. It started out the president didn't shake her hand, as though somehow that anybody would have bought that sham of a handshake. She spent the entire evening just sitting there sucking on this giant lemon, and then toward the end actually tore up his remarks on camera. It was pretty petty and childish of Nancy Pelosi. It really was.
Can I clear one thing up, though?
Oh, by all means, clear it up.
Trump did not shake her hand. I realize he probably meant to do that. But she also broke protocol in introducing the president, which the protocol is my great honor. And if you'll go back and look at it, she did not say those words.
Interesting. I was busy at the time, and I missed that she did not. Yeah, it was clearly a no love lost moment. There's no question about that.
But he repaid her. But anyway, it was so many nuances and so many significant things that happened. And I thought it was a great speech, to be honest with you. And it was so many significant. We're forgetting the newly elected Venezuelan president. Even though he's unseated, but recognized by the President of the United States in the House of Representatives. And many things. If it were a movie, Jimbo, and I'll quit on this, if it were a movie I just watched, I'd have to watch it again and again to pick up every little thing that just happened.
Well, it was as you note, very well done. Of course, the high point being that reunion of the military family. And Rush Limbaugh, of course, who had just announced on his radio program that he has late-stage lung cancer, to be given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. There was probably no moment at which Democratic teeth-gritting was louder than at that particular moment. But I thought that it was a moving moment. But then again, I know Rush, so maybe I can be forgiven for that. Thank you for your thoughts, Steve. And 1-866-50-JIMBO is our number. This is David in Creston, Iowa. Good evening, David.
Hello, Jim. I'm so glad that I got through to you. You know what? The behavior that Nancy is, exploiting here. If they have all the Congress people up there have medical insurance, don't they? I mean, I'm sure they do.
Trust me. When Congress gave us Obamacare, they've given themselves a real sweetheart of a medical package, which is one reason why one of the proposed constitutional amendments for this Article 5 Constitutional Convention of the States would mandate that Congress may pass no law which applies to the public but that which does not equally apply to them, and no law that applies to them that does not apply equally to the public, so that would end that kind of thing. But yes, trust me, members of Congress are well taken care of in terms of health care.
Okay, well, the suggestion I wanted to make for Nancy is that she find her a good psychologist or a psychiatrist and get evaluated, because any person that we know in the public, if they're that angry and obsessed with something like this, they have a mental problem, okay? I think she needs to get somebody to, volunteer herself to go in and find out where her anger is derived from.
Fair enough. All right. We'll see if we can get a little psychotherapy going for Nancy Pelosi there. At least the psycho part would seem to apply. 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. We go to Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina. Jerome, good evening.
Hey, Jim, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine. You're on the radio. Go right ahead.
Hey, you talked about a cover-up. This is worse than a cover-up. There's no way in the American justice system you could get away with saying, well, I'm going to take my orders from the guy on trial, huh? And whatever he decides to do, we'll just roll with that, right?
Well, first of all, Mitch McConnell is not, quote, taking orders from the president. And second, if you hadn't noticed, Jerome, this is not a trial. It resembles a trial, but there were no, for example, rights of due process in the impeachment or indictment phase. And in the Senate, again, as in the case of the House, they can set their own rules on impeachment in ways that have nothing to do with the justice system. So, I mean, if you don't like that, you can always ask that the Constitution be changed. But The Constitution gives each House of Congress almost complete discretion.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If this was Obama, you would be